So in order to create encryption, first we need to create something called AWS key management service. So let's go to the key management service, which is KMS. So I'm going to select key management service over here. So once we are in this particular key management blade, we'll have options here, AWS managed key. If you go to AWS managed key, we have by default key over here. So one key which is for the block storage and another one is for the file storage. So if you go to customer managed key, by default you won't have anything. So since I already created here, so I can see one here. So let's create one customer managed key. I'm going to click on create. I will select symmetric for the simplicity. Based on your requirement, you can either select symmetric or asymmetric. The difference between symmetric and asymmetric is symmetric, it will use a single key for the encryption and decryption. However, asymmetric, it will use public and private key pair for the encryption and decryption. So I will select symmetric and I'll keep the key usage as encrypt and decrypt. And then I'll click next. Here I'm going to give a name demo KMS. I'll keep everything as it is. I will click next. So it will ask key administrator. So who to whom you wanted to assign permission to manage this key. So by default you will see over here what are the available users and the types roles here. So accordingly you can choose. For this purpose I'm just going to choose all the users and all the roles over here, and then I will click on next. So here key users who can use the key. For example, let's say select the IAM users and roles that can use the KMS key in a cryptographic encryption. So here also for the simplicity, I will select everyone. So but in your scenario, you have to choose the users or the services which you wanted to utilize the key. So I will click next. So then I'll click on finish. So now we have created a key which is demo KMS. So using this key, we are going to encrypt the volume. For example, let's say I'm going to the EC2 and then I will select a volume tab in the EC2 blade. So under volume, I'm going to create a new volume. So let's hit on create. So I'll select the volume type as SSD GP2. So I'll keep the size 10 GB and I'll keep the availability zone by default. I'm not going to change. So here as you can see by default this is not enabled. So we need to enable this, and then it will ask the key, which key you wanted to use for the encryption. So I'll use demo KMS and then I will hit on create volume. So now it will create a disk and it will encrypt the disk using the key. So the volume is created. So if I click the volume, and if I go to the encryption, so as you can see now it is encrypted. So this is how we can encrypt the volume. So if I go back again and if I choose some other volume, for example this particular volume, so if I go to the encryption, it is not encrypted and there is no way we can do the encryption. Okay, even if you click modify, you do not get any option to do the encryption. So this is how it is not possible to do the encryption of existing volume on the fly. So however, what you can do, as I mentioned earlier, you can take a snapshot of this. For example, let's say if I go to the volume and if I select this particular volume and I can do the snapshot, create snapshot. So let's say I'm going to define this as test demo encryption snap, and then I will click on create snapshot. So now Amazon will take a snapshot. So if I go to the snapshot here, so we can see our snapshot here. So let's search for the snapshot. So this is the snapshot. So let's click on this snapshot. And from this snapshot, we are going to create a disk. So if I go to action, so I'll get an option called create volume from snapshot. So it will create a disk from this snapshot. So while creating disk, so we need to select encrypt this volume and then specify the demo KMS. So After that, we need to create a volume. So once we create the volume, the new volume which is created from the snapshot will have the encryption. So this is how you're going to do the encryption of existing volumes. Later you can attach that volume to the particular EC2 instance, etc. So this is in brief how to create customer managed key encryption in Amazon Web Service for the EBS or EFS volumes.